Hello friends, in this video I am going to explain Pega best practices. In the real-time development, as a developer, we must follow the Pega best practices. So today I'm going to give some Pega best practices. In another video also I'm giving to give some best practices. Okay. So the first best practice is don't create an activities. Don't create an activities. Please check the possibility to skip the creation of an activities. Please check the possibility to skip the creation of activities. Sometimes it is a mandatory to create an activity for a specific rules. For example, if you are going to create an agent, without an activity there is no agent. Without an activity there is no agent. For example, if you go to the declare on change, declare trigger, there also you need to create an activity to perform the appropriate action. So in those places we cannot escape from the creation of activities, but try to limit the creation of the activities. That is the best practice. First best practice, that one. Second one is, even though if you create an activity, cut down the activity into smaller activities. Cut down that activity into a smaller activities. So for example, if you take any activity, for example, I am opening some OOTB activities. I am taking some OOTB activities. For example, let me take one activity. Okay, PX get data. PX get data. This is one OOTB activity. The activity steps should not be more than 20, because the maintenance of the activity would be very easy. Otherwise it will be very difficult in the debugging perspective as well. It will be very difficult for the debugging perspective as well. So always limit the activity steps not more than 20. In some other scenario also, if you want to maintain the super logic, I mean to say, if you want to maintain the too much logic in your activity, please cut down that activity into a smaller activities. This can be useful for the reusability purpose as well. For example, in your activity, if you are setting an error messages in a multiple places, then create a one activity for generating or setting an error messages. You can call that activity, so that the maintenance also would be very easy. Tomorrow if you want to change that error messages, you can directly go and open that activity and you can make changes, required changes. Otherwise, if you disturb this main activity, you may get an error. Unfortunately, if you did a mistake in some other place, you may get an error. That's why, so maintain the 20 steps maximum. Otherwise you can cut down that activity into smaller activity. This is another best practice. Next one, in your sections, in your sections while implementing the CSS, I mean to say, if you want to apply the styles or skins or UI changes, don't create a CSS, don't create a styles in your sections. For example, let me open one section. I am opening one section, sample section, user interface, section. You can take any one of the section. Don't create inlines inside the section. For example, this is my second section. I am taking this second section. So here, for a simple text or a sample text, For a sample text, I want to apply some CSS styles. Some developers can do this using the advanced presentation options, inline styles, color colon red like this. But this is not at all acceptable. This is not at all acceptable because the inline styles are also not maintenance. Maintenance is very not easy. I mean to say, maintenance is not easy. So don't create inline styles in your section. This is one of the best practice. See this one, by default this section has some inline styles added to your cell or layouts. Please remove. So this is not at all a best practice. This is another one. Next one is don't create, sorry, don't hard code any value in activities or a data transforms or a data pages, etc. Don't hard code any value. For example, I have this activity, assuming I have this activity here, I am hard coding one URL. Here I am hard coding one URL. So that is my development URL. That is my development URL. So what will happen? Okay, after your testing, okay, successfully working, then you commit your changes and you move your changes to the higher environments, etc. So immediately these changes are go to production. It will pointing to the development environment, not production environment, because you forgot to update this URL in your code before check-in. You forgot to update this URL before check-in. For example, param.setting equal to http colon slash 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 www dot w3schools.com, assuming. So this is working fine successfully, but after your testing you are promoting your changes to the test environment, but you forgot to update this URL with the actual URL. Then you will get an error messages, or you will get a different results in the higher environments. So it is not at all best practice to hard code the URLs. It is not at all best practice to hard code the data, not only URLs, any configuration values, any configuration values. For that, you have to use the system settings or dynamic system settings. From the Pega 8 point, I mean in the Pega 8.6, it would be an application settings or dynamic system settings. Again, there would be a differences between these two. I don't want to explain here, but try to use the configuration settings like application settings and dynamic system settings. And even in the for the previous best practice also, which one, don't create a inline styles. For that, use the skins. Use the skin in the sense, use the mixins or formats. Use the mixins or formats. And don't create an activities. Try to achieve that using the data transforms or any other Pega rules. Try to achieve the same functionality if possible with the data transforms or flows, etc., with other rules. Okay, these are the some of the best practices. Another best practices is, I have a one section. I have a one section. This is my second section, and I'm taking one text box. I am taking one text. Another best practices. So here I am changing to my text input. Okay. So except whenever if loan amount is changed, I just want to refresh the section and I want to get the data from a database table. I want to refresh the section. I want to get a data from some system or from a database table, etc. So usually some developers will do like this: create an action, On click or on change, on click or on change, your wish. Because here, after entering the text into the text box or after changing the text into the text box, right? On change, people will try to add so many actions here. That is not at all best practice. I'm telling you. Add an action. People will use the post value. After that, people will use the run activity and whatever the activity they want to call it. Then after that, they will do the refresh section. They will use the refresh the section. See, uh, this is not a best practice, and it will also impact on the performance. It will also impact on the performance. How? Because whatever the action you have configured here, when you click on this, when the event is fired, immediately one request will be sent to the server here. If you change any text in your text box, three requests will be sent to the server. One is a post value, another one is a run activity, another one is the refresh the section. I don't want to create these many actions. This is not at all best practice. What I can do, I can remove this post value. What post value will do? Post value will send the data to the server, not required. What run activity will do? Run activity, an activity will be executed on the server side, not required. Again refresh the section. Okay, I mean to say the same section will be refreshed in the sense it will go to the server, and load the same section again with the latest data which is available in the clipboard. The same section will be loaded from the server with the latest data available in the clipboard and come back to the client. Now what I can do, simply in this refresh the section, I can call whatever the activity I want to execute. Because in the above step, I have configured run activity with hello activity, assuming I don't want to create a separate step. Simply, I can configure hello activity, refresh the section. When you do the refresh the section, automatically whatever the text box data will be sent to the server. Because for that only, right, you mentioned the post value, that is not required. When you configure or when you add any action with refresh the section, the data from the client will be sent to the server. So the data will be sent to the server and your activity executed and the same section will be loaded again. So three actions are implemented with a single action with refresh the section. Like this, don't create too many actions. Why? Because if you configure the too many actions, the request will be sent to the server. All those are executed by the Pega server. Then only your section or your UI will be changed. Sometimes if one request is halted or if one request is trying to load also, you will not get a proper appearance, you will not get a proper behavior, and you will not get a proper data on your screen. That's why. Okay, remember this point. This is very, very important. This is also one of the best practice. Next one, from the Pega 8 onwards, don't create an activities. We have an alternative approach, right? Standard agents for queue processor and advanced agents for the job scheduler. Try to use that instead of agents. Try to use that instead of agents. And so that this is the another best practice. Another best practice is, whenever if you want to configure or whenever if you want to create any services, or sorry, not connect rest or a connect soap, etc. I am opening that. I am opening any one of the connect rest or connect soap. Let me open that. uh, Assuming I want to open one connect rest. In this connect rest, don't hard code the endpoint URL. Don't hard code the endpoint URL. Either you can get the either you can get from the database, through the database, or you can get through the GRS, global resource, by using the global resource configuration. Don't hard code like this. Upgrade to the new endpoint configuration. Okay, I mean to say, don't hard code the endpoint URLs in the connect rest or service rest, etc. Okay, this is not at all best practice. And again, another best practices is you have to follow some naming conventions. You have to follow some naming conventions. I mean to say, if there is any flow action, you have to use the pre and you have to use the post processing and pre processing. So you have to follow the naming conventions. This is another best practice. And next best practice is use lightweight list whenever is required. Use lightweight list whenever is required in your OBJ browse. This is another best practice. Use lightweight list whenever is required in your OBJ browse. Okay, and don't create an OBJ browse. Don't use the OBJ browse because uh, you cannot you cannot reuse that. So instead of that, you can, if you can create a report definition so that it can be reusable in across your application. It can be reusable across your application. That is also one of the best practice. Another best practice is try to use the data pages whenever is required. Why? Because the data page is holding the data so that it will not it will not get the data multiple times from a source whenever is required, because once it get the data and available in a memory so that you can reuse it. So try to achieve that by using the data pages. For example, in your section you have a drop down. The drop down data will be loaded by using the report definition. In another section also there is a one more drop down. Even for that also there is a data page which will, sorry, for that also there is a report definition. By using that report definition as well, you are getting the countries list. See, here also you are fetching the data from a countries list, and in the previous screen also you are fetching the data from a countries list. So two requests will be sent to the database server. I don't want to do that. I can create a one data page and I want to load through the data page, and I can load the data whenever is required, so that the number of calls will be reduced to the database, and at the same time also it will improve the performance of your application, because if the database call is reduced, obviously improve the performance. Okay, don't use too many when conditions. If there is a logic, try to use the decision tables. Some people will write when customer type is equal to this one, do this, set this value. When customer type is equal to this one, set this value, etc. Don't do that. Use the decision table. Use the decision table. This is one of the best practice. And and always creating an activity with obj save right now option. Please use this option wisely. Why? Because in all the scenarios the obj save with right now option is not required. Just obj save and do with commit with error handling mechanism. Okay, so take appropriate action based on your business scenario, based on your implementation, because all the time no need to create with obj save and right now option. Why? Because if you take the commit, Pega will take care of saving the data into the database table. If there is an error, it will roll back the data. So that would be a best practice always. OBJ save with right now. Always it is not at all suggestible. OBJ save and next commit or commit with error handling. Try to use this option. This is also one best practice in Pega. Either because I am explaining, either it is related to the UI, either it is related to the application performance, either it is related to the maintainability. Okay, and see, always maintain the guardrail score above 90. Always maintain the guardrail score above 90. Otherwise, your application, because the guardrail score is a symbolic representation of how your application was coded. The guardrail score is a symbolic representation of how your application was coded. I mean to say developed. So go to the application, development. Where is this? Sorry, quality dashboard. Okay, quality dashboard. It is taking time to load the dashboard. When you open the guardrail score, the guardrail score should be more than 90, because depends upon the project, depends upon the companies, because some clients will okay with the guardrail score is more than 75 also. Some companies, I mean some clients won't accept the guardrail score should be more than 90. Some clients are okay with if the guardrail score is more than 80, like that. Okay, so 1 minute, I am opening the guardrail score again. Configure, application, development, sorry, quality, guardrails, compliance score. Okay, I mean to say we will discuss this as well. And creation of the test cases is mandatory. That is also one of the best practice. Creation of the test cases, so that it will reduce your unit testing time. It will reduce your unit testing time, because once you, for example, if you create any activity or if you create any decision table, etc., after that, okay, you successfully tested, it is working fine. Again, if you create a unit test case, if you create unit test cases later also, if some person modified the code also, you no need to test the entire functionality, just by executing this test cases, so that it will give the whether the test case is pass or failed. And even these test cases also will be helpful when you are doing the integration testing. When you are doing the integration testing, that means your rules are integrated with the other rules, so that if you want to test this specific rule is executing properly or not, working fine or not, then you can easily test by executing this test case. So creation of the test cases is mandatory. That is also one of the best practice. Now see this one. The guardrail score is 28 out of 20. This is the worst score. This is the worst score. Since this is my personal edition, I am not following the standards, etc. Leave it. Now here see how many number of rules. Total how many number of rules? Total 520 rules. This application, I am talking about only my current application. 70% of the rules are compliant rules, and 134 rules are with warnings, and 133 rules with unjustified warnings. So this will give the I mean this will showcase the how you followed the standards or not. Okay, so please improve the guardrail score always. That means whenever you created any rule in Pega, before check-in, please make sure that remove all the warnings. Okay, and not only removing the warnings, warning can be removed by providing the justification. That is not at all correct. Remember this point. Warning can be removed by providing the justification. That is not at all correct. Because why that warning arised by the Pega? So you have to do the proper coding. Then only it will improve the application performance, etc., etc. That means you have followed the standards properly. You have followed the standards properly. Even you can remove the warning by providing some dummy justification, but you did not implemented that design properly. You did not implemented that design properly. You have to implemented that. If the warning completely eliminated by providing the justification, that is one case. If the warning completely eliminated by doing appropriate code changes, for example, let me tell you, section here, this record has a one severe or moderate warning. So what I can do, this is severe warning. This record, this rule has one severe warning. I can provide the justification. Okay, this is as per the convenient, etc. Okay, submit. Okay, now fine. This record has one severe and moderate warning, but this was justified. This was justified. Okay, total rules, rules with warnings and rules with unjustified. Now just refresh. but justified by admin, okay, even though the rule was justified, but that is not correct. You have to remove the inline styles, you have to remove the inline styles. Okay, so in that way you have to code the application. So always check your guardrail scores and go to the warning details and download the warning details report and verify each and every rule set versions, how many number of rules and what are the warning details. Please make the changes accordingly. This is important for the best practices, because the guardrail score will be increased only when you follow the best practices. Guardrail score will be increased only when you performed or followed the best practices. Okay, this is the another best practices in Pega. And okay, so in this video, I in this video these are the some of the best practices I have explained. In next video I will explain a few more best practices, because best practices, understanding the standards, follow the best practices, very very important to the developer. Okay, so thank you. In the next video I will explain the remaining and few more best practices in Pega.